Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of the Monster Report. I'm your host Nick Adam Poling. The Monster Report's a show highlighting those entertaining creatures of film history. I'm joined here today by my brother Troy Poling. Good to see you.
Good to see you too, sir.
Yep, all the way up from Mississippi. Troy is responsible for a lot of the opens and some of the graphics that are used here on the Monster Report. So we're grateful for all the work you've done for this show and for this YouTube channel.
Well, I appreciate that, and anything I can do to help out would be great. And it's great having you, or being together, and we can watch some Godzilla movies and some other monster movies that we both have a big interest in. I'm more of the monster, was a sci-fi horror genre, but you've always piqued my interest in the actual monster movies with the kaijus and everything like that too.
Yeah, and of course we grew up watching a lot of these on great old VHS copies, and now we have these films transferred to DVD and Blu-ray, so we can see them in all their glory and almost like they're new films. So we're kind of getting for you anyways, a fresh perspective after a long time of not watching these films and coming back to it to see the next film in our interview lineup, which is Godzilla vs. the Smog Monster, or Godzilla vs. Hedorah, 1971. So after a while of not seeing it and then getting the chance to see it on Blu-ray, what was your maybe first reaction?
Well, I remember growing up, it was actually one of my favorite movies of the Godzilla series. And I remember it being so good, and I loved almost every single minute of it. And then I watched it again on Blu-ray, and I'm like, this doesn't hold up as well as I thought. There's a lot of psychedelic imagery with it. Since it's being in the early 70s, I kind of understand that. But I didn't remember it being as tedious with everything. It seemed like a little slower than most other Godzilla movies. There was not a lot of build-up to a lot of stuff. The fights seemed pretty tedious and long and drawn out, and a lot of slow motion in that versus all the other quick cuts that were in the actual human story, I want to say.
Yeah.
But it's still enjoyable for what it is. It's not my favorite Godzilla movie, but I do like the Smog Monster. I think that was a really interesting take against other monsters that are from space. This was sort of a human creation, which is kind of interesting, kind of has parallels with Godzilla being a human creation as well. And the Smog Monster, or Hedorah,
yeah.
Sorry, being the entire Earth's fault, basically, with that message and everything like that too. So.
Yeah, and so there's the social message that's out there about the save the Earth, which this is something I guess to point out is that we grew up with at least this VHS copy, the Scimitar VHS copy, and later recently I got the Orion copy just because of the the different cover, different artwork. But both of these films are the AIP dub, which was done back early on, and that was done. Usually those AIP, the international, are done in China, and so a lot of the times they get whatever voice actors they can get, and a lot of the times the synchronizing isn't as good, the translation maybe not as good, but the newer dubs that are done for DVD and Blu-ray, you've never seen this version until just today, right. In fact, and so there's some minor changes. The pronunciation of the Smog Monster was Hedorah in those versions, and then they updated it to what the Japanese word Hedorah, in that, so that reflects the newer version of it. But yet the American release is always called Godzilla versus the Smog Monster, internationally released as Godzilla versus Hedorah, and some minor other kind of changes. Some character names might have changed pronunciation, but overall the same film. But so I guess as we go through it, I'll maybe point out some of the differences in translations between the AIP and newer dub that was done. But as far as the social message, it kicks off the film right away with kind of in your face symbolism, and not even symbolism. It's not even referring to the pollution. It's what is it?
It's just, first shot is just polluted river, polluted water, or ocean, or whatever. And then it all of a sudden cuts to a lady singing, And she's singing in Japanese on that version. And apparently there was an actual translation in English, or dubbed in English, of what she was singing, which was...
the song Save the Earth.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I think the filmmakers were really trying to parallel to kind of say, show all the pollution and get the message out like right away. And this could easily have been just a standalone movie without being Godzilla. I think they worked him in there pretty well, though. I mean, it wasn't just like, oh, by the way, Godzilla's in it too. He was the hero, in it. But when it first starts out, it reminded me of Indiana Jones with just that first musical number, and then it gets into the movie. This one didn't seem to have a connect between the singing and everything. But with the social message that's all throughout it, I mean, it really hits it home in the very first shot and the very first scene with the credits and everything like that too. Yeah,
and I mean, it's showing oceans full of just polluted waters and trash and all of this, which whether that's was happening during the 1970s of just landfills, just it looked like floating islands of just trash and debris, which I think that of course today that would make quite a bit of headline news with that kind of severity of pollution that was happening. I think they may have went a little over the top about it, but I guess they're trying to push the message, trying to push as how bad it possibly could be. And then we cut to our character introductions where we meet the young boy Ken Yano, who's apparently a Godzilla fan.
Which it always killed me, the fact that he has these little Godzilla toys, and I'm like, you're marketing a monster that has been steadily destroying Japan for a while now.
Sure.
So it's like, hey, let's make a toy out of him for kids, because it's Godzilla, I guess. Even though he's destroyed countless cities and many people. We should still market the crap out of them, I guess.
And that brings up another point about capitalism or whatever. I mean, here I am, of course, collector of these kinds of things. But why wouldn't some company want to market and capitalize on death, destruction, and whatever else? But I guess by this point in the series, Godzilla is more of a child-friendly hero, savior of the Earth character, and they've gotten away from him being a disastrous hurricane kind of creature. But yet, you're right, but it's not unlike when we were growing up, the first R-rated movies that were being turned into toys. We had Rambo, we had the Predators, the Aliens, and these are films that kids are not supposed to be watching, but yet there they are making toys out of them because there's a market for it. There's kids that want to buy them, and of course here's a kid that's a big fan of Superman apparently, and and Godzilla.
The disconnect between those two, it's like, hey, Godzilla's my favorite, but also Superman. Just toss that in there, just because.
Right.
Never mentioned again that he likes Superman.
He's an all-American superhero, and then there's Godzilla, but. And there's the American kids that are probably also doing the same thing, playing with Godzilla toys. So during that time, especially, and of course for the toy collectors out there, they're just like, I want those toys right there. And you see, the smaller and larger version of Godzilla in the background. You see what appears to be Ghidorah, but with smaller wings. So who knows. So as it goes along, we're introduced to the characters. We get
an uncle, brother, friend.
Yukio, who we don't really know if he's a lab assistant to the father, who's the professor, and
they at least established the father is a scientist. They establish him. This guy is just there, and then that's about it. He doesn't really do anything. He watches after the kid a little bit.
Ken, come here!
Now, don't worry. He'll be all right.
But, I don't know, it just doesn't establish his character whatsoever. What is he? He's just kind of leads a little bit, and then he's wherever the action, again, is forced to take him, I guess. And,
so even in the other Godzilla films, the familial structure isn't always established well. Godzilla vs. Megalon, which coincidentally, the young boy Ken Yano, the actor who plays him, is also Roxxon in that film as well. And he's living with two grown men, or you assume that they're all living together, but again, is one of them a father? Is one an older brother? We never get that established, but he's there to drive the plot forward and to give, you know, the characters someone to have conversations with, to bounce ideas off of. You know, the scientist by himself, I guess he could talk to himself, but he could have inner monologue, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, he never really interacts with the guy. The father scientist never interacts with the random. What's his name?
Yukio.
Yukio.
Yeah.
He never really interacts with him that much. He doesn't ask him any questions. Yukio doesn't help him with any of the science stuff that he goes with. Actually, he involves his son more in solving the problem.
Yeah.
A heck of a lot more than he does with Yukio.
Mm-hmm.
So Yukio, I think at this point, he's pretty useless.
Yeah, he watches the kid. He drives the professor to a location once, but you know, he's there. He's there as another character, a side character. And you know, as it goes along, we discover that there's something out there that's destroying these ships. Something out there that's unknown. It's kind of like the Loch Ness monster. It's elusive, and it's starting to wreak some havoc. And so. But as far as it goes, you know, they see the smog monster starting to emerge, and we get those dream sequences, I guess you could say, which we're going to see as we go along. Animations that you see kind of as transitional elements. What do you think about those when they start popping up?
They almost seem so random, and there's absolutely no lead into them. They are just basically there as transitional elements, just for the viewing audience. You know, you don't cut away to like a character, like it's like a news person, a news report, saying these are the animations of what, you know, Hedorah is actually doing. You know, it's just kind of this. So again, the message is there. Especially when you should see the machine picking up the factory growing bigger, and as it's picking up all the green grass, and then eventually gets consumed by Hedorah. You know, and it just doesn't seem to fit in the movie. But again, they might have been trying something a little bit different for a Godzilla movie. Yeah. I'm not sure why. They maybe didn't have any establishing shots between scenes or any transitional scenes between those that they shot or something like that. I'm not sure.
It just seems out of place.
It seems so out of place. There's a lot of stuff in that movie that just seems out of place. Random cutaways to characters that have absolutely no dialogue. Yeah. The animations, the space stuff. Yeah. That they just start explaining, and especially when they start talking the science stuff, they really just put in like the little animations of like the atom splitting and everything like that to just basically explain to the viewer, hey, this is actually what we're talking about. So let me teach you about how atoms split and what happens when atoms split and stuff like that. And it's almost trying to teach the audience something. It felt very out of place for a Godzilla movie. Yeah. Yeah.
And he tries to explain a lot of different origins. I mean, gosh, Smog Monster has the origin of just simply being made of sludge, simply being made of minerals, simply being a creature that perhaps came from space. All of these different elements that came together to make him, isn't it a little bit simpler than that? Even Godzilla, the origin is somewhat simplified in a lot of ways. It's just simply he is the result of irresponsibility with nuclear weapons. But even the Smog Monster had a component of nuclear power there. Are we talking about the pollution caused by nuclear fallout, or are we talking about the pollution caused by just trash and sludge and whatever else that's being dumped into our oceans? He seemed to have all of the benefits of every single one of those. And so, you know, as the film goes along, we see that Hedorah has certain powers, and he comes aboard land with that psychedelic club scene.
That is the strangest club scene, because it feels something so much like out of a Terry Gilliam film. You know, Yukio apparently is in a club, and he's sitting there and he's drinking. And then there's all the psychedelic music going on, and the backgrounds with the paint splotches that are going in and out, whatever. And then all of a sudden he turns to the club and sees them all dressed as fish heads, and then the monsters attack. And never references, like, what was he seeing? Was he just drunk? Was he inebriated? Anything like that, you know?
Under some influence.
Under some kind of influence, and it just is like, oh, by the way, Yukio is seeing this stuff, and then we're done.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I need some kind of explanation for that.
He could have been on a carousel ride in Las Vegas
Something.
with Johnny Depp and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. So it looks just like out of a scene from that film.
Yeah.
But yeah,
They had an explanation in that movie.
you know,
Why?
it's kind of in the eye of the beholder.
I guess.
Yeah.
And the random chick that just kind of gets in his car after that scene, and it's like, oh, she's going to be important to the plot, and then she's done in that scene. And it's like, oh, well, another character we didn't need.
Mm-hmm.
You know? And I'm just like, and they don't seem too disturbed by the fact that two monsters are fighting outside.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
It happens all the time.
I guess it happens so often in Japan that even the news report, when it first says, it was like, this appears to be some kind of monster, and it's just so matter of fact, like, this is the world we live in now. So
it's unfortunate, but we just got to deal with it. And you know, just like it's another thunderstorm. Oh, it's another snowstorm. You know, another monster attack.
Yeah.
I wonder what this one's made of.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, sludge and smog and sulfuric acid. But yeah, we're also kind of looking at that from. I look at these films now from a post 9/11 kind of perspective. When as children we were watching this, you know, pre social media, pre all of these connections that we all have and enjoy that keeps us up to date. I'm getting text messages even as we're sitting here to pick up prescriptions from the pharmacy. So, you know, we're always seem to be connected. And in time that they weren't as connected, you usually got the news report on something that happened the next day, unless you were witness to something that would happen. You didn't know about it, and like a vehicle accident, a natural disaster. You didn't hear about it usually until the next day when the newspapers came out.
Right.
So I guess I kind of understand in a lot of ways why the guys gambling in their, you know, in their room, their apartment, whatever, wouldn't have known that there was a monster duel going on, and hey, maybe we should evacuate.
Something.
Of course, it's happening at night. Everyone's asleep, and you know, unless you're hearing this all happening without a window.
Hearing the two 500 foot monsters fighting outside and blowing the crap out of the entire factory. Mm-hmm. I should probably do something about that. You know, I think it would wake some people up.
And you know, thank goodness Godzilla showed up to manage the smog monster. Otherwise, he'd just be out there, you know, sucking up the smoke from the pipes.
Right. You know, that was this. There was 3 stages or 4 stages to the smog monster, wasn't there?
Well, they talked about the 3 and speculated to the 4th, but they never had a reveal of the 4th. You know, he had his tadpole swimming.
Right, he was in the water
stage, the more upright walking on land stage.
On 4 legs, he was crawling.
Sometimes crawling and sometimes on 2, and then the flying saucer.
The flying stage was the strangest one to me, because he's flying basically on sulfuric acid gas.
Yeah.
Now, I'm no scientist. Can that happen?
I don't think so. And only in the monster movies.
Okay. Yeah. And then he was passing over people, and then some people got sick, and that was it. And then other people just dissolved into bones.
Yes. Yeah.
Why
Cleanly.
not? Yeah, clean, very, very clean bones. Yeah. Which was kind of disturbing for a Godzilla film. He's usually not that violent. I mean, not as like showing the violence or the gore, I guess. Yeah. You know, which was strange to me.
And with a child character in there, you wouldn't think of that. And this is one of the things about the Japanese films. A lot of the graphic violence that might be in films internationally like that, you know, like the Japanese films that are even created specifically for children. Even the Gamera series had its share of graphic violence at times, whereas, you know, we're a little bit more sensitive in the United States with our rating system to make sure that parents understand, you know, this has got some content that maybe not be suitable for children, but the same restrictions don't seem to be as strict internationally, especially in Japan. So even putting the kid as witness to a lot of these things happening, these people falling over dead, and just this awful things that are happening to them. He's witness to all of that. So I guess as you're watching this, it's one of those things to make sure that you understand this isn't completely for all children to watch. I make sure that certain scenes I don't show my children.
Right, yeah, I wouldn't either.
Yeah, just because of the frightening nature of it. But yeah, as it goes along, even that scene where he's in this flying stage, there's some strangeness to that roller coaster leading up to the second monster battle.
Yukio. Yeah, Yukio just riding with the new chick.
Yeah, if that is a new girl or if that's the same girl in the dancing club with
short
a haircut.
Yeah, or something. I don't think it's the same girl at all.
I don't know.
I mean, she was there and then gone, but then the new girl was actually there for a long, well, not quite a while, but for the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
And that whole scene where he all of a sudden he's on the roller coaster, and of course all the monsters going along. So when's the best time to go to the amusement park? When the monster is apparently going to be overhead. And then Yukio just straight up lies to him and says, it's too clear for him to fly around, it's fine. And then what happens? Smog monster comes and starts flying around on this very clear day.
They'd assumed that he couldn't be out in sunlight.
Yeah. Right. I blame Yukio though. I mean,
it's all his fault.
It's all his fault.
Yeah. Darn you. And he also lets the kid run off.
Yeah, just, it'd be fine. That's fine. And then Yukio lets him, basically because of that, he sees all the dead bodies and the skeletons and everything.
It's, again,
irresponsible. That random explosion that just happens. Maybe that was the precursor to why the Smog monster came up. But before that, he saw Godzilla looking for him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's just walking around the city.
Yeah.
He typically does that.
Just to wander around the city.
He's kind of like a stray dog.
And the psychic connection, you would think, between the kid and Godzilla, or supposed psychic connection or whatever, that's sort of there sometimes.
Kind of implied.
Yeah.
Kind of.
You would think that he would have gotten a little bit from Godzilla. It was like, hey, I'm around. Be careful.
Danger,
little kid.
Yeah. And so, you think about... So he gets off the roller coaster, runs off on his own, calls Dad. Yeah. There was an explosion. I should probably be heading home, but he's got to find his mom.
Yeah, from his dad. Go to school, find your mom, and then come home.
Yeah.
You're responsible for her, even though you're 6.
Yeah. And, he's witness to all of these awful things that are happening. That bizarre shot where the construction site.
Yeah.
What happened there? Yeah.
So the Smog monster's coming up, and this guy's on a construction site on one of the tall buildings with just like I-beams everywhere, and he sees him and he falls off, and then Hedorah just passes through the entire steel structure, and then the sound cuts out, and the steel structure collapses without any sound whatsoever.
Yeah. Which is in both versions of the film. Yeah.
Okay. You would think that in that one they would have said, hey, maybe there's a scene in there where it needs some Foley sound. We can toss that in real quick.
Even a stock sound effect.
Stock sound effect would have been fine, but no, just silence.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure there's some sort of special significance there, but it is kind of out of nowhere. Yeah. But I guess it's consistent with the fact that this film has a lot of the out of nowhere shots. That one is in a lot of ways no different. So
true.
Yeah.
And then when Yukio comes back around after that, and he's all of a sudden the leader of teenagers against pollution, or some student movement against pollution, and says, "Hey, we're going to get 1 million people to march against pollution. We're going to throw a party on top of Mount Fuji."
Yeah.
That's what we're going to do.
I guess
to combat this,
raise awareness, maybe. Yeah.
I don't know. His intentions with that movement are so unclear, and it just all of a sudden, hey, by the way, he's also a leader of the movement, so that's his purpose.
Yeah.
And then it's gone. And I'm like, really? What happened? Yukio, come on.
Yeah, he's failing on all levels.
Yes, he is. However, the scientist's dad is not failing on all levels. He figures out that the Smog monster is actually a mineral, right? Yeah, he's a mineral, and he can be brought back to life with... he can be actually there could be several different Hedorahs around, and they could join together to create one big Hedorah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he finds that, and like actually he's doing something.
Yeah.
To help. And Yukio.
In a lot of these Godzilla films, the scientists aren't always the American films where the scientists bad. They're mad scientists. They're bad, awful villain creatures, that are out there that are creating Frankenstein monsters, that are creating all these awful things in the name of science. But in these films, the scientists are trying their best to save humanity with science, and so this character being no different, he's being proactive in trying to alleviate, to eliminate the smog monster, and making all these discoveries in the process. So, even throwing back to the original Godzilla, where the scientist creates a horrible invention called the oxygen destroyer, they decide to use it on Godzilla, he's also dealing with the fact that he has to be responsible for that, so he's going to end his own life to make sure that it doesn't fall into the hands of people that would be irresponsible with it. So this scientist, being no different, tries to be very self-sacrificial, even to his own health, to put himself in harm's way to make sure that we can make discoveries about this creature, study it, but in the end, eliminate it.
Right. And I mean, his invention of defeating Hedorah is actually not detrimental to humanity. It's just detrimental to drying the monster out, and that's all he can figure out what to do. And hopefully it works. And to be fair, the military is very pro him, and like, this is the best plan we've ever had, because they don't really have any discussion about it. He just kind of calls up the authorities and tells them his plan, and they're like, all right, let's build that thing.
Yep. Look, we've tried everything else, and it's not going to work.
Yeah. So let's trust this one scientist guy with absolutely we've never had any contact with before.
Yeah.
So they trust him, and it worked on the small scale. So let's see if it works on the big scale. The one thing we have not been talking too much about is the main man. We have not been talking much about Godzilla.
Yeah. Go on.
He's not in there a lot until the very near the end.
Yeah.
I missed actually seeing him a lot, because we see a lot of the Smog monster, but in this movie, Godzilla has a lot of trouble defeating him.
He does. Yeah. And he's trying to figure him out too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he gets that wound on his eye from the acid spit, whatever thing that comes out of the sludge.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, and then he has a problem. I mean, that's actually one of the times you actually see Godzilla take a wound, and it affects him throughout the rest of the movie.
Yeah.
He has to fight with one eye. His aim's not as accurate with his atomic breath. He has trouble just dealing. He punches the smog monster a couple times, but all it comes out with is burned sludginess on his hand.
Yeah.
And, a couple times I thought I saw like bones or something like that. It was burning away his skin or something.
Yeah, it kind of looked like that because of the white color, but I honestly think it's just like dried sludge, on his hand. Is the way I kind of looked at that, because you see as the suit is getting more beat up and all, he's kind of got stains on him, and so you assume maybe that's from duking it out with a monster made of sludge. So the traditional ways of fighting a monster, Godzilla's even realizing, and he even has that, stroking the chin moment where he's like, what?
Yeah, because he burned the pollution before, and then when he hit him with his atomic breath, it just didn't do much.
Yeah.
He did it twice, and then he did the stroke of the chin. I'm like, okay, well, this usually works, and this is not working.
Yeah.
So how do I change up these tactics?
Yeah, it's going to take something new to take this monster out. My traditional boxing and duking it out kind of methods. I'm a monster. That's what I do.
Yeah.
But, at least he's, I guess, considered a thinking creature as he goes along, because he ends up kind of partnering with the humans to he's like, okay, they've got the right idea. Let me see what I can do to help this out. And almost accidentally discovers that their nice electrode weapon will work, and it will actually do something. Which
the military almost completely screws that up, because it's all reliant on harnessing electricity from the local network. And of course, when the two monsters rolling around, they are bound to hit some power lines at some point, which they do. And then it's like, oh crap, what do we do now? And then Godzilla decides to take matters into his own hands. Of course, after getting all that sludge poured on him in that hole, which I thought Godzilla was done for. You know, he was having problems breathing. He got sludge poured on him, but you know, you can't keep a good monster down. So he comes back with a vengeance. I do like the fact that Yukio's random party at the top that won 1 million guys right before the monsters fight and everything like that. I don't know what his plan was to light some bonfires and to, well, first off, start his scene in black and white, playing a very solemn, depressing song, and then all of a sudden it kicks into psychedelic music and a band comes out of nowhere with some amplifiers and everything. I guess they're trying to draw the monsters into a fight. I'm not sure what his plan was.
I think, I don't really think he has a plan. I think we're giving a little too much credit when we think he really does have a plan. Because it is Yukio in the end, and he couldn't even get 1 million people. He couldn't get more than 100 up there. So
he did get those creepy cutaway villagers, though.
If he got them at all, if they even really exist, or we all are watching this movie and have a shared hallucination of those people, because I wouldn't be surprised if the next thing you see is, is just some random characters running at the bottom of the screen singing "Let's all go to the lobby."
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised at all by that in this film. So
I would not either. It's
But go on. I think when it comes to that party scene and everything that's happening on Mount Fuji, they had assumed maybe that something might end up happening on Mount Fuji, I guess. But they're having that party up there. Apparently, the parents have no problem with Ken attending it, because they send him up there. As long as you take, Yukio with you, you'll be safe, right?
And that one random chick,
which I looked her up. The character's name is Mickey. But yeah, and I think in the AIP dub, you actually get her name in it. But so he's got some supervision, but is this really a location you want your kid going to? Again, we're looking at this from the perspective of post 9/11 years.
They knew monsters were out and about. They didn't think that, maybe a party on top of this mountain with fires and music and everything like that, and hundreds of people, possibly millions of people, or 1 million people on top of this would attract some kind of monster.
He'll be fine.
He's fine. And then he really doesn't do anything else with the rest of the plot. He's just kind of on top of the mountain. However, Yukio dies a hero, sort of.
Yeah.
He tries to throw some fire at the Smog monster.
Yeah, it's the best he's got.
And he fails miserably at that.
Yep. Throw the torches.
Yeah, goodbye, Yuki.
Yeah. But in the end, and those who are trying to be aggressive against the Smog monster, the humans that really try to be aggressive against him, end up, getting owned. Even the helicopter pilots that try to drop, I guess, a purified version of oxygen on him, they fail as well. The humans, had they not had Godzilla's intervention, even their electrode setup out there, their new weapon, failed when they tried to use it on their own. Pump up the voltage and blast him. It's not enough.
Fuse. It's a fuse, and it's like, can't anything go right? And then Godzilla figures out that somehow his atomic breath and electricity work exactly the same. In this movie they do.
It's the suspension of disbelief. The audience, in that time, they'd watch it once in the theaters, maybe twice, a couple of times, and it's energy. It's energy weapons, so, somehow it's almost plausible to most people, but as, rewatching these films, you're saying, there's a lot of what we call pseudoscience in these films. And in a lot of ways, again, it's one of those things you have to kind of set the scientist's mind, the science out of the equation, even though we're trying to also build up the scientist characters as the know-it-alls.
He traps the Smog monster in between the two electrodes, hits it with the atomic breath, and dries him out, pulls out two things, not sure what they are, supposed to be eyes or reproductive organs or whatever, and then he holds them up and then hits the electrodes again and gets rid of them, and you think it's done. No, a secondary Hedera comes out of nowhere, and then the fight goes to him. And of course, how can we talk about the second fight without talking about Godzilla's new ability?
And this answers that trivia question, which usually people get wrong. Can Godzilla fly? The answer being yes.
Apparently he can.
Yep.
Only if he tucks his tail
And yeah,
uses his breath to fly.
Plenty of it.
Oh my goodness.
I just thought about this. I wasn't sure if it would work, but it worked.
He's pretty aerodynamic flying through the air. He catches up with him pretty quickly.
Yeah. And he never uses that ability again.
He uses it twice in this movie?
He goes and gets Hedorah and brings him back.
Yeah.
Using that same ability.
Yeah.
So I guess it's one of those ways he can catch up with the Smog monster. I guess they needed to figure out a way other than just simply running to catch up with him. He's got Hedorah on the run in a lot of ways because now Smog monster is realizing that he might be defeated if he doesn't get away from Godzilla. Even though Godzilla, the directors even come out and said that those were supposed to be his eyes that he pulled out.
Right.
Yet you do see him duking it out with the Smog monster after that, and he has eyes.
Right.
So.
And he gets progressively weaker, I guess. That was supposed to be his second form. He split off between getting dried out or whatever. And then he takes him out again. And then just kind of he wanders off into the sunset. And but then I love the ending, the very, very end shot.
And there might be another.
There might be another, and they show a picture of possibly another Hedorah in the bay. Yeah, and then more pollution.
It shows the stock footage literally from the beginning of this film, and so it's assuming that maybe they're a little sequel bait, and there was possibly a sequel in the making, but rumor has it that the executive producer Tomoyuki Tanaka didn't like what had what was put together.
How could he not? Godzilla flew.
Exactly. He said in a lot of ways that this wasn't true to the form of Godzilla, so they switched off to the next film, Godzilla vs. Gigan, being a little bit more traditional monster fight, and putting Godzilla back in the place where he needs to be, where he's just simply duking it out instead of being cleanup wastewater kind of duty. Yeah.
Protector of the earth.
Yeah.
Somehow.
So, as the film ended there, and you react to it, and you realize a lot of things, as far as the overall film goes, where it lives in the Godzilla franchise as it compares to other Godzilla films, what do you think of it now after again?
It's not as high on my list anymore. I still like it somehow, just because I like it better than Biollante, just because I like him actually. I don't like him fighting a flower. That's just my problem.
Okay.
I also like the fact that they didn't have usually with Godzilla films they have an evil corporation, evil people controlling a monster or something like that. And that's what he's fighting against, as well as the monster. In this one, the Smog monster is a byproduct of all of humanity's problems, and we've created him. Yeah. So we've created a giant monster out of the atomic age and nuclear weapons and everything like that. And we've also created another monster that's our fault as humanity. That's like the anti. Of Godzilla, I guess, or it draws parallels between the two. So I actually do like that. It was an interesting take on it. It was an interesting monster to go through and stuff like that. Overall, though, it has so many weird cutaways and weird elements to it that it's almost too difficult to watch. And again, the fight scenes are just so tedious, and they're so almost slow motion with everything, and there's not a lot of cuts with them. And the rest of the movie is cut, very fast-paced and everything like that. But when they have the fight scenes, they just usually stay on a shot for a long time before they make a cut. And it just kind of goes like, okay, keep it moving. And I don't think the music helped at all either. Because whenever you see Godzilla, it was the slow plodding. I'm like, but then there's no music during the fight scenes,
Yeah.
or not a lot of it.
Very little, yeah.
Which is troubling. Actually, I want to. You would amp up the action, I think, a little bit. So, overall, though, still enjoyable, just not as enjoyable as I remember.
Yeah, and the music you were talking about, the conductor Richiro Manabe, who ended up also doing Godzilla vs. Megalon. When it comes to the Showa series, the classic series of Godzilla films, the oldest series, the conductor you usually think about, Akira Ifukube, who does the traditional Godzilla march and themes that are most traditional with Godzilla. Masaru Sato does a lot of the more island themes, like Son of Godzilla, Godzilla vs. the Sea Monster, and then there's this one that the themes are memorable, I will say that, but yes, they're kind of more of a droning, almost lazy kind of feel to it. And then of course we got that mixed with the psychedelic 70s, just not just like a 4/4 rock rhythm, the guitar is just doing whatever it can do, the drums are just constantly banging, and making as much noise almost as possible, as much sound as possible. And so, and this film is definitely a product of its time. I will say this, growing up, this film this VHS copy got a lot of mileage out of me, just because I guess as a kid, I was just, loving every minute of it, and it was one that I watched quite a bit, especially when, maybe company was over, mom and dad were doing things with, family members or or friends that would come over, and, I just wanted to throw on a Godzilla and enjoy. That was the one I usually kind of defaulted to a lot, because it was just so bizarre, and it had a lot of time spent in the monster action. But even when it comes down to like the pacing of the film, the beginning of the film goes so quickly with all that cutting, and then that last monster fight on Mount Fuji seems to last forever.
That's forever.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
I was just like, okay, just move on. Move on from the Godzilla monster fighting action. And I never thought I would say that.
Right. Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
We should brought in the Super X.
The Super X, yeah, they needed some more time. It's still in the developmental stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. But speaking of later Godzilla films, the actor who played the Smog monster, Ken Pachiro Satsuma, ended up playing Gigan in the next films, and then Godzilla in '85 through Destroyer. So his first role, anyways, or at least that as I understand it, being the Smog monster, which that suit was a very bulky, cumbersome suit, which he's not really doing a lot of action because it is what it is.
Right.
It's you really can't move a lot in the thing, and it's heavy, so it's not like he's doing a lot of physical movement. Haru Nakajima, who's playing Godzilla from the original Godzilla, he's still in good shape and doing that, and he's got one more film after this. This Godzilla suit, it's its third film with some modifications. Its third film from Destroy All Monsters. Had one more film with Godzilla vs. Gigan before they finally retired it and moved on to a new suit. So a lot of different things that were happening, with the Godzilla suit, the suit actors, and the effects directors. Eiji Tsuburaya was done with Toho by this point, and I'm not sure. I need to look at the timing of things. He may have actually passed away by this point, but a new special effects director, Teruyoshi Nakano, was taking control, at this point, and stayed in control for a long time, till '85 with the Godzilla series, anyways. And so, as far as this film, it's still got a special place in my heart. It's still one that I every once in a while bring out, but it's also one that if I show somebody who's never seen these films before, I feel like I need to explain some things.
Oh yes, you will need to explain a lot.
And there's some things that can't be explained.
No, and and especially I think the big thing is when you would really need to see other Godzilla films, or at least know the monster before you saw this one, because Godzilla's entrance into the movie is just kind of all of a sudden he's there.
Yeah.
And then he's gone, and you're like, well, what was? If you didn't know who it was, you're like, what was that? Oh, it's it's Godzilla. Well, who's Godzilla? You'd have to start explaining it and stuff like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It kind of stands alone at the same time as you're not sure what the perspective of humanity to him. Is he this destroyer of worlds? Is he this awful creation that is here to destroy us, or is he the savior of the planet? You have to just have a little understanding of what had been happening to the series up to this point.
Yeah.
But in a lot of ways, it's also a standalone film because there's no references to any other Godzilla films. And he's never really referred back to the Smog monster until Godzilla Final Wars, when there's a brief appearance of the Smog monster in that film. But other than that, he never fights pollution again.
He's no longer Captain Planet.
No.
It's Godzilla. He's Godzilla King of the Monsters, not Godzilla King of the Planet.
Yeah, Captain Planet took from his heroic deeds. Yeah. So, any other thoughts? Let me talk about the director real quick before I get to that. We'll get to that while you're thinking of your final thoughts on this film. Yoshimitsu Banno, first Godzilla film, and I believe one of his first films ever. Never made a Godzilla film again as far as directing, but he ended up being the executive producer for the 2014 Godzilla, the American Godzilla. So interesting, but he never fought the Smog monster again, and maybe there's something in the back of Banno's mind to bring back the idea of Godzilla fighting pollution. Who knows?
So Godzilla Resurgence, he's fighting a Smog monster.
I don't think so. I don't think he will.
He could.
I don't think he will. But, yeah. So, we'll see what goes along with the American Godzilla as far as the future is concerned. As we're taping this in December of 2015, anyways. But final thoughts on the film.
Again, I would say it's middle of the road for me. It's not terrible. Mm-hmm. It's not really good. It's just it's a Godzilla film that could have been a standalone film, and it sort of was a standalone Godzilla film. Mm-hmm. It would have been. There's a lot of stuff that would have been a lot better. It doesn't age very well because it's very set in the 70s. Mm-hmm. That's from all the psychedelic music to the fashion to the look of everything. It's very 70s. Mm-hmm. But again, it's still enjoyable. If you like a Godzilla film, you'll like this one. Yeah. It doesn't. It's really heavy-handed with its social message and commentary for it. It's so heavy-handed in every aspect. Mm-hmm. You can't get away from it. But maybe that was their intention. So, I'd on a scale of A to F, I would rate it like a C minus.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'd go with.
All right, C minus.
Yeah.
If there was one scene, like when you think of the film, if someone were to mention it, what's that one shot or scene from the film that you immediately think of? It's the one with the. I'll say mine when while you're thinking of yours. But the one thing that sticks out in my mind before anything else is Godzilla flying. When it really comes down to it. It's the one where he flies.
Yes.
And
I was going to say that, actually.
Okay.
That is always going to be the one with his tail tucked up and his breath going and just flying through the air. Mm-hmm. You could easily say it's a Godzilla fail, something like that. It didn't need to be in there. However, it is. If you say, what movie is your favorite? Oh, I couldn't think of the title. It's the one where Godzilla flies. Smog monster.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's the thing you usually think about. Mm-hmm. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, Troy, for enduring through this film with me and meeting me very early in the morning to watch this and checking it out and giving me your reactions to it. I certainly appreciate that, and we're definitely gonna have you back.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, next time we have you in town, or we can go into another monster review, whatever we can come up with as far as the future of the Monster Report. But certainly appreciate you being here and all the work that you've done for the title sequences and graphics that have been used on this show. And looking forward to seeing what you come up with next.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Yep, and thank you all for joining us and enduring through this conversation of probably one of the films that's probably on the bottom of your list, but maybe it's not. But definitely one that's an interesting conversation starter, especially if you're a fan of these films. and show somebody this film for the first time, be warned. But thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Monster Report, and we will catch you next time.